Okay, so first thing we're going to talk about in Bedmas here is, I don't want to know what it stands for yet, because I know probably every one of you can tell me exactly what it stands for. But what's the point of Bedmas? What does it tell us to do? Can anybody answer that question? A little bit of a harder question. What does it tell us to do? Ryan, do you think you know? Yeah, there's a word that you could add. So the steps, what about them? Ryan or anybody else? Like which step comes first? So like the order that we do the steps, right? So Bedmas tells us what order, this is not going to be a very good sentence right now, to do the steps. That's okay though, I think everybody understands what we're talking about. Or you've heard it called this before, the order of operations. So it's a list of operations, and Bedmas, this easy little saying that we all know, although some parts of the world is different. Eh? Some people it's Pedmas or it's Pemdas. Like people actually say it differently in different parts of the world. Yeah. Weird. But for us it's Bedmas, and everybody knows it, and once you know the operations, it tells you which order to do the operations. Okay, very good. So now somebody tell me, what's the B? Very good. Who was that? Awesome. Amelia, right? Okay, E. Somebody else tell me E. Exponent. Very good. Michael, is that? Okay, exponents. D. Hannah, what's the D? It sure is. And M? Right? Good. Sometimes people forget the E, but the other ones are pretty obvious. Like there's no misunderstanding. Like guess an operation, it's bound to be it, right? Multiply, division, that kind of thing. Okay, what about the A? Addition, good. And who's that? Is that you? Good. Subtraction. Something we need to know about, there's like sort of something we skipped here, and it has to do with division and multiplication, or addition and subtraction. Go ahead. Very, very good. Yeah. Whatever comes first, so left to right. And there are times, we're going to talk about this a little bit when we get to an example down below. There are times where this is really important that kind of highlight what we mean by this. Okay, so this says divide first, then multiply, but that's not always true. If the multiplication comes first in the question from left to right, do that first. Trust me, it'll make it easier. Okay, sometimes those little steps make your life way easier. Right? And then same thing with addition and subtraction. Don't actually do it this way. You do it left to right. You don't always do addition first. Okay, they happen at the same time. Left to right is the easiest way to do it. What's an integer? Somebody remind me what an integer is. Right? Right, it has to do with that. Exactly, very good. Like negative numbers. So, but positives and negatives are both integers, but you're right. When we talk about integers, we're talking kind of about negatives. So like if I did 5 minus 7, I get a negative 2. That's like integer math, right? And everything we do basically has to do with integers. So that's when this gets really important. 7 minus 5 or 5 minus 7. Not the same thing. And so if you do it left to right, you'll always be good. You'll never have a problem. If you don't do it left to right, you might make that kind of a mistake. Question? Yeah. 5 times 5 times 5. That's what an exponent means, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good question. So here's one way to think about it. If it meant 5 times 3, why wouldn't we just write 5 times 3, right? Like exponent means something different. So don't write 15, because if it's 15, it'd be 5 times 3. We wouldn't write it this way. It means something else. The nice thing is, if you kind of forget that, get in the habit of using your calculator, because your calculator knows how to do exponents. It'll always get it right. And then you don't have to worry about, like sometimes your brain plays that trick. I'll show you in a minute. Sometimes your brain plays a trick that 5 times 3 is 15. So even though you know what an exponent is, you write down 15. If you thought about it, you'd know it was wrong, but you just make that mistake. So use your calculator, and then you'll probably be good. Every calculator is a little different, so you want to know for yours. But for mine, I would do 5, and that little half part triangle button, 3. Equals 5 times 5, which is 25 times 5 again, which is 125. Okay, we'll get back to that in a minute. Any other questions? Here's my question for you. It's a little bit of a trick question. When do we use BEDMAS? There's no right or wrong answer here either, by the way. Yep. Very nice. I like it. Ryan, what were you going to say? Kind of the same thing. Good. Anybody else want to add to that? What's that? Yeah, very good. Yeah, I like that. Here's my answer. Always in giant capital letters. And the reason why I make this a big deal is because I always get people like down the road, like 2 months in, we're working away, and they're like, are we supposed to use BEDMAS for this? Yes! What do you mean are we supposed to use BEDMAS for this? Like, BEDMAS is math. That's what math is. It is, but there's never a time where you ignore BEDMAS and just do things in a different way. You always use BEDMAS. But there are these famous BEDMAS-like questions, and they look like that. A big, nasty question like that. And that's like your typical BEDMAS question. We don't even really do this in math class, though. We're not really going to see anything quite like that.
So that when you solve the question about the line, and then you divide it by the answer.
Yeah, you'd have to do the whole top. We'll get to that when we get there, and the whole bottom first, and then you divide at the end. That's right. So there's all these little tricks, but that's a BEDMAS question. But when do we use BEDMAS? Always. BEDMAS is math. You always use it. Even sometimes you don't think about it, but you're using it. You don't even know it, and you're using it. It's interesting. Okay, another little bit of review. We're going to review a little bit about integers here and a little bit about exponents. So here's what I want to show you. I'm going to use my calculator, and I just want you to watch to get the answer for these 2 questions. So I've got 2 questions here, okay? And my calculator is awesome because I can type it in exactly the way I see it on the page. And this is kind of sometimes not a good thing, but I don't even have to understand it, and it'll give me the right answer. That's not the best way to go through math class. It can be a frustrating way to go through it, but So look at that, negative 25. So here I'm going to write equals negative 25. You can write that down, okay? And then the next one has brackets. Is that going to make a difference? Tough call. We're going to get to that in a second. So what do you think? You don't have to answer this out loud, but what do you think the answer is going to be when I do it this way? Positive 25. Slightly different. Is that a big deal? Would you rather have negative $25 in your bank account or $25 in your bank account? Thank you. $25 in your bank account, right? Otherwise you owe $25. Your bank account can actually go into the negative and you owe the bank money. When they get mad at you, they charge you interest. Okay, that can happen. This one's bad in this case, this one's good, right? So if the bank didn't know how to do this proper kind of math and made a mistake and said you owe them $25 instead of they owe you $20, you'd be pretty angry, I think. So it's kind of important to watch these little details. Here's my answer usually to that question. Try to wait till the end of the lesson. If you have to, then it's fine. I'll try to keep the lessons short, like I said before. Today's a little bit longer because of all the introduction stuff. But I like it if you're here while we're doing the talking so you don't miss anything.
So what does the bracket do?
Good question. What does the bracket do? Here's the difference between these two. There's a whole bunch of lessons here. One, if you understand it, it makes it way easier. You can do most of the math in your head. It'll make things faster. But 2, use your calculator carefully and it will give you the right answer. But you need to do it carefully. This one means negative 5 times 5. And this one means negative 5 times negative 5. So notice that there are 2 negative signs, 1, 2. 2 negatives makes positive. That's why our answer was positive. And this one has only one negative. Negative times a positive is negative. So that's why our answer here was negative. So see the difference? If you know that, you're always going to get the right answer because you're going to know, hey, this one should be negative. Hey, this one should be positive. But if you don't know that, you got to use your calculator carefully. Okay? You should know it. Try to remember these little things. Try to watch these little details. What about these ones? Well, let's try this. This is going to be equals negative 5 times 5 times 5, right? And this one's going to be negative 5 times negative 5 times negative 5. So if I just look at the negatives, what will the sign of the first one be? Hannah, what do you think? There's one negative and two positives. Carter, what do you think? Not sure? So just watch. So this is like a negative times a positive, which is negative, times another positive. An odd number of negative signs is going to give me a negative answer. And this one, just watch for a minute, is going to be like those two will be negative together, or sorry, positive together, and there's one negative left over. So my result in both cases, okay, don't worry too much about this. This is a lot of talking, okay? We're going to practice this and worry about it after. 5 times 5 times 5 is 25. Look at what happened here, though. Different from the last time. They're both negative. In this case, one of them was negative, one was positive. In this case, they're both negative. Confusing and complicated. These are sometimes when people say math is so confusing, this is why I hate it. Fair enough. But your calculator knows the difference. The lesson here is brackets make a big difference if the negative is inside the brackets or not. So be careful of those little things. And it's one thing that we'll practice and work on and that sort of thing. Okay, so I don't want you to write this down, but it just talks about how if the base is not in brackets, we get a negative. If the base is in brackets, well, do you have an even exponent or an odd exponent? You have to think about that, okay? But it doesn't come up a ton, not right now at least. That's right, it can at least, it can, yeah. 3, 5, 7, something like that, then it would be negative. Yeah. Okay, let's try a couple of these. So here's where I want you to write this down. Sometimes I pick on people. I don't mean pick on in like a nasty way. I mean pick on people like I'll say, I want you to tell me what the answer to this question is. Sometimes I call names out. But a lot of the time I usually ask for volunteers. So you may not want to volunteer. Like you may not feel very confident with math. You may not want to volunteer your answer. If I pick on you or call on you, you may feel like, oh, why does he do that? I don't want to be wrong in front of the whole class. You shouldn't worry about that, right? But we do worry about these things. Because in my book, it's okay to be wrong. That's why we're here. Like I don't expect you to already know all of this. If I expected you to already know it, why would you be in this class, right? But what I want you to do is think. I want you to think, even if you're not going to tell me or tell the class, what would you do first for this first one? What would you do? Why would you do it? How do you figure out what to do first? And one of the answers to that is, well, look at the operations. We've got subtraction. We've got an exponent. I look at Bedmas to try to decide what to do first. Tao, what do you think I do first? Teo, sorry. Keep correcting me if I say that wrong again. What do you think I do first? 3. Oh, we're doing A.
Oh, sorry.
But very good for B. We'll keep that in mind. Right, that's right for B. We'll get to that in a minute. What about for A? What do I do first? Ryan, what do you think? Do the exponent first. So don't write this down. I'm going to erase it. I just want to show you one thing. Is this question saying 11 squared or 16 minus 25? Right? Those are sort of two different routes you could go with this question. 16 minus 5 is 11 squared, which is 121. Or is it 5 squared and then 16 minus that? Okay, and Ryan told us we do the 5 squared part first. That's exactly right. So this is 16 minus 25. What's 16 minus 25? Anybody know that? 9. What kind of 9? Good. Negative 9. Good. Very good. Is that good? Okay, same thing for B. Ask yourself, even if you're not confident enough to tell me or tell the person you're sitting with or anybody, What do you think you would do first and why? These little things, these little questions, if you do this while we're doing lessons, if you just try, you will learn. You will get better. Math class will be a lot easier, and I'll help you with the hard parts to get through. Okay, and you'll pass and you'll move on, and then you'll be done with grade 10 math, right? So that's a good thing. Okay, so what do I do first? So Teo, is that right? Already told us we do the 3 minus 5 first. Can you tell me why? Very good. That's what brackets tell us to do. Hey, over here. Do me first. Do me first. 3 minus 5 is -2. What do I do next? Go for it. Why 4?
Oh, wait.
That's not wrong. Why 4? Good. So you're doing the exponent next, and it's in brackets. So you've got 2 negatives, so it is positive 4. So 4. And notice how I write it. Like my job, as I see it, is to make this as easy as possible for you. And part of that is showing your work the same way that I do it. Trust me, it's the easiest way. You might have a way that you think is better or that makes more sense to you. In the long run, it's not going to be as good. Like, you just have to take my word for this, okay? And so you have to try really hard to write the steps the way that I write them. I'm not trying to make it extra work. In fact, I'm trying to make it the least amount of work for you as possible. Okay? So try to do that. So we write the whole question down every time. And what is 4 plus 7? It is 11. Next one. Okay, so same thing. You can ask yourself, what would I do first? What do I think I should do first? And try it. Even if it's just one step. You don't have to do the whole question. One step. What would you do first? Give you a second to do that. Okay, what do you think you do first?
Oh, no. I was going to ask if you
Yes, absolutely. I can't think of a time ever where I'm going to say you're not allowed to use a calculator for a test. Once in a while, I might say try to do this in your head or something like that, right? But on tests, you always get to use calculators. And honestly, using a calculator is a skill in and of itself. And using it carefully and diligently, properly, there's a skill to that. So that's something else you want to practice. Okay. Yep. I need to get these back, though. These are like mine, like my personal ones I bought them with my keep past that back. And so make sure I get them back. But try to get your own, because you don't want to have a different one every day. Trust me, it'll be awesome to have your own calculator. Okay, somebody tell me what I do first. The brackets. And what happens inside the brackets? Oh, before we start, look how complicated this question is. I've got negative, another negative, adding, exponent, dividing. There's a multiplying happening in there. You don't see it yet, maybe, but there is every operation in this question. It's a tricky one. So how do I know what to do first? Bedmas, order of operations. Start with the brackets. So what is -9 plus 3? -6. I write the whole question down, so that's squared divided by 3.
There isn't a sign in front of us, so it says -2 and then bracket -6. Is that always multiplication?
It is, yes, very good. So that means multiply. Probably a lot of people were thinking that. That means multiply. So now we know what order it comes in. So what do I do next? Now, this is interesting. I still have brackets here, but these are a different kind of brackets. These are brackets that just are helping me remember to multiply. If I didn't write it with the brackets, it would look like that, which is subtraction, and that's wrong. Okay, so I need the brackets to remind me that I'm multiplying. So these are different kind of brackets. There's nothing inside the brackets to do. So I do the exponent next. Everybody agree with that? So what is -6 all squared. Again, I can go to my calculator, which keeps turning off, and go, but I need to put it in brackets, right? Because it's in brackets in the question. And so it's in the brackets. It's an even exponent. It's going to give me a positive, and 6 times 6 is 36. So write the whole question down again. Put that result in the bracket to remind me that I'm still multiplying. Bedmas says I divide first, but what am I actually going to do, Ryan? Multiply first, because we do it left to right. Here's a good example of that, left to right. The multiplying comes first, so I'm going to do that first. 2 times 36, ooh, that's a big one. So negative 72. And what? And negative and a positive gives you a negative, so then I divide, what do I get? Nice. Negative divided by a positive is negative 24. I understand that it's been a year for some of you since you've done this. I understand that integers are something that people struggle with. And we didn't cover it. Like, I didn't say anything about integers. I'm just doing it. So if you have questions about why, you have to ask. So why is that negative? I don't understand. Why, you don't, not now. Ask later is fine, right? If you just want to ask me later, that's fine. But make sure we're not doing anything you don't understand. Because then you start to feel sort of alone and like you do, and then you fall behind and then you get frustrated and then you start getting that. Right? So if you don't understand something, I know I'm going quickly. We're going to keep practicing integers though, so you'll get time. Okay, D. It's amazing. This is such an easy one, and yet a lot of people would get the wrong answer. Because your brain looks at that and sees 5. Because 2 plus 3 is 5. So your brain wants to write 5 times 4, which is 20. But you've got to multiply first, right, Bedmas? You've got to multiply first. But even though you know that, your brain's going to make you, 2 plus 3, that's easy, it's 5. No, not yet, right? So part of practice, again, is just being careful of those little things. Those mistakes that your brain, for some reason, tries to make. Okay? Because we read left to right, that's part of it. Right? Because in English, you read left to right. So you just start answering questions left to right. 2 plus 3, that's 5. And that's easy. Right? Okay, so this is actually not 5 times 4. It's 2 plus 3 times 4, which is 12. And that's 14. Easy question. This is the kind of math we're going to do a lot of in this course. These easy little 2-step, 2 operations, a bit of multiplying, a bit of adding or subtracting. But you can still make a mistake. Okay, what about E? I just want you to watch for a minute. There's 2 ways that you could look at this. And again, this highlights what the point of Bedmas is. If I say this out loud, okay, just listen to what I say. 6 plus 4 divided by 2. That sounds like this. 6 plus 4 divided by 2. And how would I answer this? 4, I would divide first, which is 4 divided by 2, which is 2. And I'd get 8. But that is not the correct answer, is it? So this is why conventions, and by that I mean the language of mathematics, is important. That when I give you a question that is 6 plus 4 divided by 2, you understand, is it this that I meant? Or is it 6 plus 4, which is 10, and 10 divided by 2, which is 5? See, they're 2 different answers. 6 plus 4 divided by 2, which one did I mean?
Would you split both those and ask you like 6 divided by 2 is 3 or 4 divided by 2 is 2?
That would actually work. That is mathematically allowed, but that's a complicated way of doing it. Sometimes you might get decimals or fractions or yucky stuff, so typically you do the whole top first. And then if there's anything to do the bottom, do the whole bottom first and divide at the very end. But you can't do this. This question doesn't mean that. Another question might, so we'd write it a different way. But that's why it's important that we talk about the language of math. And we talk about Bedmas. And we look at different kinds of questions and what do they mean. So we're all on the same page and we all know that the answer to this is 5, not 8. Okay? $5 for your lunch bill instead of $8 for your lunch bill, right? Like again, you want people not to make these mistakes, right? When they're doing your bill or whatever. Okay, I'm going to hand out. We're going to take a break there. I'm going to hand this out and let you try a couple on your. Okay, so just watch. So at the second part of that worksheet talks about this substitution thing. So if you don't get to those questions, it's not the end of the world, but give it a try. Try a couple. Here's how I would recommend doing them. Okay. So you notice that it gives me all of the values for all the variables right here. So A equals this, B equals this, okay? And here's what I would do. I would write 2, and then instead of the x, you put an empty set of brackets, 2 times something plus 7. What is the something? -2. Then I go back and I put -2 in there, and now it's just a Bedmas question. -4 plus 7 works out to 3. What about this one? It would look like this. So negative, I'm going to put a big bracket, smaller brackets, -3, big bracket, plus brackets for y. This one's y, this one's x. So that one's going to be -2 because of the -2, and this one's going to be -5 because of the -5. Does that make sense? And then what about this last one? Because it's like, this is why it's really important when we have integers, like I talked about before, these negative numbers, it's really important that you can do this carefully. So brackets for a, 5 minus brackets for x, all squared. And a is 2, so I put a 2 in there for a. And x is -2, so I put a -2 in there. And it ends up being like, this is a bit tricky, 5 minus -2. So I'll let you think about that, but it should work out to 5 plus 2. 2 negatives makes positive, right? So there's a lot of little things. And if you have brackets in there, then you can organize it and set it up properly and hopefully get the answer right. Does that make sense? So even if you don't finish the whole first part, you could skip to question 2, try a couple of those before you leave today.